For generations, we've been captivated by one haunting question. Why did the Maya, one of the most brilliant civilizations in history, suddenly vanish? The story we've been told is of a powerful empire that disappeared without a trace, its silent stone cities swallowed by the jungle. We picture a people who reached for the stars, only to fade into myth. It's a compelling story of a sudden mysterious vanishing act, fueling theories from alien abductions to strange plagues. But what if that story is a complete myth? What if the Maya never vanished at all? The truth is far more complex and, honestly, more terrifying. This isn't a simple tale of a lost civilization. It's the story of a society pushed to the absolute brink by a catastrophic chain of events. It's a story of environmental collapse, brutal warfare, and a political system that crumbled under its own weight. This is the real story of the Maya collapse. Not of a people who disappeared, but of a society that was forced to transform in the face of annihilation. A story whose echoes are a chilling warning for our own world today. The Golden Age, a world of kings and cosmos. To understand the collapse, you first have to appreciate the staggering heights from which the Maya fell. Long before Europe crawled out of the Dark Ages, the Maya were building a civilization that rivaled ancient Rome in its sophistication. This was the Classic period, from roughly 250 to 900 AD, when the Maya world was a vibrant network of powerful competing city-states. Imagine standing in the heart of Tikal in modern-day Guatemala. All around you, colossal limestone pyramids soar hundreds of feet into the sky, their temples breaking through the jungle canopy. The air is thick with the smell of copal incense and the buzz of a metropolis. Thousands of people flow through wide plazas and crowded markets, a symphony of voices in the dozens of distinct Mayan languages spoken across the region. These weren't just settlements, they were sprawling urban centers, some home to tens of thousands. The Maya were master architects. Without metal tools, the wheel, or draft animals, they built these monumental cities, aligning them with breathtaking precision to the movements of the sun, planets, and stars. Their astronomy was so advanced they could predict solar eclipses and track the cycle of Venus with an accuracy that still impresses scientists today. This cosmic knowledge was woven into the fabric of their lives. They developed multiple, intricate calendar systems, like the famous long count, which tracked time across thousands of years. They also created the most advanced writing system in the pre-Columbian Americas, a beautiful, complex script of glyphs that recorded their history, royal lines, and cosmic beliefs on stone monuments called stelae and in elaborate folded books. At the center of it all was the Kuhul Ajau, the Holy Lord or King. These rulers weren't just politicians. They were seen as divine conduits between the mortal world and the gods. They had one main job: maintain cosmic balance through elaborate rituals, including ceremonies where they would offer their own blood to nourish the gods and ensure the sun would rise, the rain would fall, and the all-important maize would grow. Maize or corn was everything. It wasn't just food, it was a sacred substance, believed to be the very material the gods used to create humanity. Life revolved around its cultivation, and a good harvest was a direct reflection of the king's power to please the gods. For centuries, this system worked. Cities flourished, populations boomed, and the holy lords built monuments to their own glory. From the outside, the Maya must have seemed invincible. But just beneath the surface, the seeds of their own undoing were already being sown. The Great Unraveling. The end didn't happen overnight. There was no single event that just wiped the Maya off the map. Instead, the collapse was a slow, agonizing unraveling that spread from city to city over more than a century. Starting in the late 8th century, the rhythm of Maya life began to break down. We can read the clues in the archaeological record. For hundreds of years, the Maya had obsessively carved their history into stone. But after about 830 AD in the southern lowlands, the carving just stopped. The monuments went silent. Across this core region, the massive construction projects that had defined Maya cities for generations halted. Palaces were left unfinished, temples fell into disrepair, and the bustling plazas grew quiet. It wasn't uniform, but a domino effect that rippled across the landscape. Cities in the southern lowlands, the very heartland of classic Maya culture, including famous centers like Palenque, Copan, and Tikal, began to hemorrhage people. Their populations plummeted as people simply abandoned their homes, leaving their belongings as if they planned to come right back. They never did. Within a few generations, these once mighty cities were all but deserted, their magnificent buildings left for the jungle to reclaim. It was a demographic disaster, a complete political and social implosion that saw the ruling dynasties and the elite class that supported them utterly disappear. This brings us to the core question. If they didn't just vanish, what could have caused such a complete and devastating collapse? What could shatter a civilization at the peak of its power and leave its greatest cities as ghost towns? The answer isn't simple. Archaeologists have spent decades piecing together the evidence, and what they've found isn't a single culprit, but a conspiracy of forces, a perfect storm of environmental catastrophe and human failure that tore the Maya world apart from the inside. The investigation, exploring the culprits. To solve this mystery, we have to become forensic investigators, examining the clues left in lake beds, soil, and even the bones of the Maya themselves. And the picture that emerges is of a society under siege from multiple directions at once, the perfect storm of drought. For years, the drought idea was just one theory among many, but recent science has made it a prime suspect. By drilling deep into the mud at the bottom of lakes in the Yucatan Peninsula, like Lake Chichancanab, paleoclimatologists have been able to reconstruct the climate with incredible precision. Trapped in those layers of ancient sediment is a clear record of the past, and it tells a terrifying story. The sediment cores show that starting around 800 AD, the Maya region was hit by a series of intense, multi-decade droughts that lasted for nearly 2 centuries. This wasn't just a dry spell. Some scientists call it a mega-drought, one of the most severe climatic disruptions in the last 7,000 years. By analyzing the water isotopes trapped in gypsum, a mineral that forms when a lake dries up, researchers could actually measure how bad it was. The findings are staggering. During this period, annual rainfall may have dropped by as much as 70% in the most extreme years, with average humidity falling by up to 7%. For a civilization that depended entirely on rain-fed agriculture, this was an apocalypse. The Maya had sophisticated reservoir and canal systems, but they were built for normal, seasonal droughts. This was something else entirely. Reservoirs dried up, crops failed, and widespread famine set in. The agricultural surplus that fed the cities and supported the entire social structure was disappearing. The sky, the domain of their gods, and the source of their king's power had betrayed them. Death by 1,000 cuts, environmental degradation. But the climate wasn't acting alone. The Maya themselves had become unwitting accomplices in their own destruction. For centuries, their population had been booming, putting immense pressure on the fragile tropical ecosystem. To feed everyone and build their spectacular cities, they cleared vast areas of forest. Trees were cut for 2 main reasons. First, to clear land for farming. Second, they needed enormous amounts of wood to fuel the fires that cooked limestone into the plaster they used to coat their brilliant white temples. It's been estimated it took up to 20 trees to produce just 1 square meter of lime plaster. When you imagine the sheer scale of a city like Tikal, the ecological cost is almost unimaginable. This deforestation had disastrous results. Without the forest canopy, the thin tropical soil eroded, losing its fertility. Even when it did rain, the land was less productive. On top of that, climate models suggest that clearing the forest on such a massive scale may have made the drought even worse. Forests help recycle moisture into the atmosphere, so by cutting them down, the Maya may have accidentally reduced their own local rainfall. It was a deadly feedback loop. More people meant more deforestation, which meant less food and less rain, which put even more pressure on the remaining resources. The scars of war. A civilization at war with itself. For a long time, scholars pictured the classic Maya as peaceful priests and stargazers. That romantic image has been completely shattered. The Maya were always engaged in warfare, but as the environmental crisis worsened, the violence escalated to a horrific new level. Evidence from this period paints a grim picture. Cities that had been open and undefended started building massive walls. Palaces and temples were burned and destroyed. Carved inscriptions, once focused on royal history, started boasting about battles and the destruction of rival cities. An inscription from Naranjo, graphically, describes an attack on the city of Huitna, stating it was attacked and burned for a second time. Researchers analyzing lake sediments near Huitna confirmed this, finding a thick layer of charcoal from that exact period, followed by a dramatic drop in human activity. This total warfare, aimed not just at capturing rival nobles, but at wiping out a competitor's ability to exist, seems to have become common. Why? As the drought dragged on, competition for the few remaining resources, especially reliable water and fertile land, would have become ferocious. War was no longer about prestige. It was about pure survival. A 2022 study of the later capital of Mayapan found a direct link between periods of drought and spikes in civil conflict, ending in the city's violent collapse. Growing warfare wasn't just a symptom of the crisis, it was an accelerant. It destroyed trade routes, disrupted farming, and created a climate of fear that made any coordinated response to the drought impossible. The aha moment, the truth, is a mosaic. So which was it? Drought, deforestation, or war? The real aha moment in understanding the Maya collapse is realizing there is no single answer. It wasn't one of these things. It was all of them, locked in a deadly spiral. The collapse wasn't an event. It was a cascading system failure where each disaster made the others worse. Think of it this way. The foundation of Maya society was the divine king. His power was based on a sacred promise. In exchange for loyalty, his rituals would guarantee cosmic order and bring the rains. Now introduce the mega-drought. For years, then decades, the rains fail. The king performs his rituals, sheds his own blood, but the skies stay empty. The maize withers and people begin to starve. That sacred promise is broken. Faith in the king, the very bedrock of the political system, begins to crumble. This crisis of faith is made worse by the self-inflicted environmental damage. The deforestation and soil erosion mean the land is less resilient. This leads to social unrest. And then comes the warfare. With resources dwindling, neighboring kings, each desperate to hold on to his authority, turn on each other in a frantic fight for survival. This escalating violence eats up resources that could have been used to fight the drought. It shatters the trade networks that brought in extra food. It makes it too dangerous to even farm the fields outside the city walls. The political system, instead of organizing a response, is literally fanning the flames. And we see this political breakdown in the ground, like a discovery in Yucanal, Guatemala, where the remains of a royal dynasty were ritually burned in public. A clear sign of a violent overthrow of the old regime right in the middle of the crisis. It was the perfect storm. A climate crisis triggered a crisis of faith, which was amplified by an environmental crisis and a political system geared for war. The entire structure of classic Maya society came crashing down. And the people, seeing their leaders could no longer protect or provide for them, simply voted with their feet. They walked away from the holy lords and their dying cities. The Great Migration and Transformation. This is the crucial point that rewrites the myth of the vanishing Maya. The people didn't disappear, they moved. The collapse wasn't an extinction, but a massive demographic shift and societal transformation. The abandonment was concentrated in the southern lowlands, the traditional heartland. Faced with starvation, war, and a failed government, the people left. So where did they go? Many moved north into the Yucatan Peninsula. The geology there is different, with natural limestone wells called cenotes that provide more reliable access to groundwater. In the north, cities like Chichen Itza and later Mayapan didn't just survive, they thrived in the centuries after the southern collapse. They built new empires with new styles of art and government, adapted for a new era. Other groups moved into the highlands of Guatemala and Chiapas, where different ecological conditions allowed them to persist. The Maya population essentially recentered itself, abandoning the regions that could no longer support them for areas that offered a better chance of survival. The old model of divine kingship in massive jungle cities was over. Society became more decentralized, but Maya civilization in a new form endured. And this isn't just a theory. Recent genetic studies have backed it up. An analysis of ancient DNA from individuals buried at the collapsed city of Copan confirmed a major population decline around the time of the collapse. But it also revealed a strong genetic continuity between the people who lived there before the fall and modern Maya populations today, confirming that the people were not wiped out, but that their descendants survived the upheaval. The collapse, then, wasn't the end of the Maya people. It was the end of a specific political order that had dominated one region for centuries. The people survived by adapting, moving, and transforming their way of life. They left the monumental cities of their ancestors behind, not because of a mysterious plague, but because those cities and the system that built them had failed. They chose survival over tradition, and in doing so, they ensured the Maya story would continue. The living Maya, the legacy. Perhaps the most important truth, and the one that completely debunks the vanishing myth, is this: the Maya are still here. Today, an estimated 7 to 10 million Maya people live in their ancestral homelands across Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras, and in communities all over the world. They are not the relics of a lost world. They are a living, breathing, and resilient people. They speak more than 28 surviving Mayan languages, direct descendants of the language carved into those ancient stones. In the highlands of Guatemala and villages across the Yucatan, ancient traditions are still alive. Farmers still plant the sacred maize, and the cycles of traditional calendars still hold meaning. Their culture today is a vibrant fusion of ancient beliefs and modern life, a testament to their incredible capacity for survival. For centuries, their story was silenced, first by the collapse, then by the Spanish conquest, and then by centuries of discrimination. But today, a powerful cultural resurgence is underway. Mayan languages are being taught in schools, and communities are reclaiming their heritage. The descendants of the architects of Tikal are now doctors, activists, artists, and scholars, fighting to preserve the unique culture passed down to them through generations of incredible hardship. To say the Maya vanished isn't just wrong. It's an erasure of this living history. It dismisses the resilience of the millions who survived the collapse, who adapted through the conquest, and who carry their heritage forward today. The silent stones of the ruined cities aren't their final chapter. The true legacy of the Maya is found in the faces of their descendants and in the enduring rhythm of a culture that refused to disappear. The story of the Maya collapse is so much more than an ancient mystery. It's one of history's most powerful cautionary tales. It shows how even the most sophisticated civilization isn't immune to the consequences of environmental damage, climate change, and political instability. The forces that brought down the great cities of the Maya, prolonged drought, resource depletion, and endless wars fueled by failing leadership, sound eerily familiar, don't they? The Maya didn't vanish. They were forced to reckon with the collapse of their world, a world they had helped unmake. They left us not a mystery, but a lesson etched in the silent stones of their abandoned cities, and one we'd be wise to listen to today. Thanks for watching. If you want to explore more of history's great civilizations and the complex truths behind their stories, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time.